This is the simple way of using a clock gauge to dial in a piece of material in a lathe chuck. Mounting the dial indicator in a little block like this that can go onto the tool holder. Making sure that it's set to the centre height, because as you're reading off a piece of round material, if that's not exactly on centre height, then you introduce a cosine error into the clock. So now we can make a measurement on the outside diameter of this material by winding the clock gauge in, getting it up to 0, and then we can turn the chuck to see how much run out we've got and make the necessary adjustments. But the other problem is if we want to measure the face here as well to make sure there's no run out here, it would mean possibly having a second dial indicator mounted to measure in this way. But this is an easier way of doing it, using exactly the same setup here. We move this out of the tool post, drop that down this way, lock that in, and then just simply revolve the clock round. Now we can run that in and make our measurements against the face of the material. Very simple solution. Also a handy thing to have if you don't have very many clock gauges. In this particular one I use quite a lot, but I do have to shift it from setup to setup and use it on both this lathe, my Chinese mini lathe, and also onto the Myford lathe. So you can get a great deal of use literally out of the one gauge. And quite simply move that round and then just release the little lock there. The lock's made out of brass so it doesn't damage the outer casing of the clock gauge, and it only needs to be clamped very, very lightly into position. And now we can run that in to make our measurement on that side. Nice simple solution to a problem. It's a simple thing to make. It literally is just made out of a spare tool holder. It's still got the screws in here. I just removed the height adjustment screw and then just made up a simple piece of aluminium here, held on with a couple of little 4mm screws. And I've mounted little blocks on here, on that side and on the base there, and that adjusts the height. So I've set that so that whenever I put this on, I'm never going to have to adjust the centre height. It's always going to be set very accurately. Nice simple solution. Thank you for joining me. Hello, I'm Nobby Clark. Welcome to my workshop. The piece of film at the beginning of this video, I showed you this tool that I'd made for the mini lathe to enable me to check out run out on the workpiece, using the dial as a revolving option so that I could also measure any run out on the face of the material as well. I'm lucky that I have two lathes in my workshop. The mini lathe I bought just over 7 years ago, and it was literally the first major tool that I had when my workshop was set up. later I added a very nice Myford lathe to the workshop as well. I had at the time thought of selling the mini lathe, but when I bought this second hand, it wasn't in the best condition when I bought it, and I had a lot of cleaning up to do on it to get it into a nice sort of working condition. And I thought, well, really, for the amount of money I'll be likely to get for it, I thought it was worthwhile to keep that one as well, because it gives me another option if I'm working on a project on the Myford lathe and then something else crops up and I want to use the lathe for that as well. I have another lathe that I could do other work on as well. Anyway, this tool you saw does work extremely well. I'd just like to show you something else as well. I'm just going to move the camera position so I could show you this a bit better. Bear with me just a moment. Here I've made an identical, almost identical adapter to use on the Myford lathe. The one for the Chinese mini lathe is mounted on a spare tool holder. This is one of many tool holders I made for this very simple tool post on the mini lathe. That came with 4 tool holders, but I made a lot of extra ones, and this was one of them, made out of aluminium. After I got the Myford lathe, I only had, I think, 2 or 3 tool holders to use with the Dixon tool post. So I knew that I'd need to buy some more. But what I do is experiment in actually making one. And I only ever made one. It was quite a task to make it, but this was made out of aluminium, and I have used it quite a lot actually. But now I've got lots of import tool holders for the Dixon tool holder. This really has become the sort of a spare, and obviously it was much easier for me to drill and tap this to fit the little plate here to hold the dial indicator. So this obviously fits into the tool post. We locked in place, and I can remove the clock from the mini lathe one and then attach that in here for the Myford lathe. This little dial indicator does get moved around the workshop rather a lot. I mean, I've only got a couple of dial indicators anyway. One that I bought some years ago, it was bought second hand, as this one was, on eBay, and after using it, I think for the first time, it just jams solid. This one's proved to be very good. It works extremely well. It's a Mercer dial indicator, and I think this one's made in Switzerland. Anyway, it works in exactly the same way as I showed in the earlier clip of a video. You can just draw this into the workpiece. You can set a 0 or any position on the dial, and then just check for any run out. There's obviously a bit in this, but that obviously can be corrected. And if I want to then measure off the front face here, all I have to do is tip the tool holder over, mount it on that side, and then just revolve the dial round, and then I can run that in with the same thing, measure off the face. So it works extremely well. It was an interesting project to make both of these. to set, as with the one for the Chinese mini lathe that I mentioned. I put little blocks on it so that it would drop in to give me the correct height position straight away, so that the probe on the indicator is absolutely central to the workpiece. Obviously more important, I think, when it's used against the surface here, because that being round, it can put errors in. So what I did to adjust the height, I've just inserted if you can see that, a tiny little set screw in here, which I kept adjusting until it gave me exactly the right height that I needed when it's mounted into the tool post. Possibly not as important for the face, because it is sort of actually a flat surface, but I could quite easily put another set screw on the top here for the other side if that is actually a problem. But you know, a simple solution really, quite a neat little device to have, one for each lathe. Well, I hope that was of interest. I've seen all sorts of different devices on YouTube, some really splendid holders for dial gauges, some of them where they're sort of moulded to the shape of the clock dial itself here, and even some that have the profile required for the tool post as well. Others where you've got literally two clocks stacked one behind the other to measure both sides, but this was the ideal solution for me, not having many clock gauges, only I think 2 clock gauges actually, so I can switch this one round. What I have done also is used a small sort of copy of a Noga arm, and I use that on the Myford lathe occasionally to dial in material, but it's finding somewhere to put the magnetic base. That's not as easy on the mini lathe, because being a lot smaller, again you're stuck for somewhere to put it, and then fiddling around with the arms on the arm itself. It seems to take ages to get it into the right position, and it makes it a lot more difficult to align it so that your probe is always on the exact center line as well. So this, as soon as it's put onto the tool post, is immediately set in the correct position. So I hope that's sort of interest to you. But such a simple thing to make. I guess that with the Dixon tool holders, I think some of the import ones, the material isn't fully hardened and probably could be drilled and tapped as well. I didn't really want to risk that when I'd made this. So I thought, well, I'd got the aluminium one, that was the simplest option for me. And with the very, very cheap, simple tool post and holders for the mini lathe, all the tool holders are made out of aluminium anyway. Not that they don't work perfectly well, but there we are. So there we are. Thank you for joining me again in the workshop today, and thanks again to all the subscribers to the channel and to all the lovely comments I'm receiving as well. I hope to have another video for you very, very soon. Thanks very much. Bye bye for now.